It was supposed to be just another TV appearance. A friendly guest. A familiar face. But the moment Jonathan Roumie stepped onto that stage, something felt off. Like the room had been waiting for a reason to turn. He smiled, sat down. But behind the grins and applause, there was tension. The kind you feel in your chest before lightning strikes. Joy Behar tried to keep it light. Well, our next guest plays the man himself. Jesus on The Chosen. Let me tell you, the resemblance is almost spooky. Laughter. Jonathan chuckled politely. Not quite spooky. Just a lot of good writing and prayer. The audience clapped, but one chair remained still. Whoopi leaned in, that slow, measured look she gives when she's sharpening a blade in her mind. So Jonathan, she said, you play Jesus. But let me ask you something honest. Do you actually believe the stories? I mean, really? Water into wine. Lazarus rising from the dead. The room dipped into silence for a half-second too long. Jonathan held her gaze. Calm, steady. I believe in grace, he said. I believe in healing. I believe that miracles happen in ways we can't always explain. Whoopi raised her eyebrows. In 2025, you still buy into all that? I do, she smirked. Even with science, with facts, with all we've seen go wrong in the world, especially with all that. Joy tried to shift. Well, whether you believe it or not, he does a fantastic job on the show. People love it. But Whoopi wasn't done. You ever wonder, she said, if religion's done more harm than good? Wars, hatred, judgment. You think playing Jesus is helping, or just adding to that noise? Jonathan's smile faded, not from offense, from depth. That's a real question, he said, and it deserves a real answer. He leaned forward. Faith has been misused. Absolutely. But that doesn't make the faith itself wrong. It means people got it wrong. We don't throw out love because some twisted it into control. We return to the source. Whoopi folded her arms. You don't think it's dangerous? Preaching to people who might use it to judge others. Tell them how to live. I'm not preaching, he said. I'm living it. Quietly, consistently. If someone sees something in that worth following, that's not control. That's invitation. The audience was still. No laughter. No cue cards to save them. Sunny Hostin cleared her throat. Well, Jonathan, I was raised Catholic. I know how deep it can go. But don't you think it's different when someone like you on a hit show starts speaking as if you are Jesus? Jonathan didn't blink. I never pretend to be him. I portray. There's a difference. But even in portraying, I feel the weight of it, and the responsibility. Whoopi chuckled. But there was no humor in it. I just think people need to be careful. Faith can become fantasy real quick. Jonathan replied. So can skepticism. That one landed. She stared at him. He didn't look away. There's a cost to believing, he said. People will call you naive, foolish, fanatical. But there's also a cost to believing in nothing. Emptiness, isolation, despair, a pause. I've seen what happens to people who believe in something bigger than themselves. They forgive more. They serve more. They hope more. Joy glanced at the producer off camera. Let's take a quick break, she said. More with Jonathan Roumie when we come back. But the cameras were still rolling, and the tension hadn't lifted. Because behind the banter, a storm was forming, one no one saw coming. And the next time Whoopi opened her mouth, she wouldn't be asking questions. She'd be throwing fire. And Jonathan, he'd be ready. The show came back from break with tighter smiles. The laughter was forced. But the tension, it was louder than ever. Jonathan Roumie adjusted his jacket, glanced across the table. He knew what was coming, and he wasn't backing down. Whoopi leaned forward, voice calm, sharp. You know, Jonathan, you seem like a good guy, real nice, real sincere. But here's the thing, don't you worry that by preaching this faith stuff on TV, you're making people feel judged. Like if they don't believe like you, they're wrong. Jonathan shook his head gently. I don't preach. I reflect, and if someone feels judged just because someone else believes in something different, maybe that says more about what they're wrestling with inside. Sunny blinked. Are you saying if someone's uncomfortable, it's their fault? I'm saying, the light only hurts if you've been in the dark too long. Whoopi scoffed. So now you're light, and everyone else is in darkness. No, I'm saying there is light, and I'm doing my best to walk toward it. Joy interrupted. Okay, let's not turn this into a Sunday sermon. Jonathan spoke again. I'm not here to convert anyone. I'm just here to represent truth as I know it. I think people are smart enough to think for themselves. Whoopi crossed her arms. Tell me something then. Do you believe gay people go to hell? The room dropped. Joy's eyes widened. Sunny shifted uncomfortably. Jonathan didn't flinch. I believe every soul is loved. Every person is known. And no one on this earth has the authority to write anyone else's eternal story. Whoopi didn't move. That's a dodge. No, he said. That's humility. Sounds like fear to me. No, he said again. Firmer, it's reverence. Reverence for a God who sees deeper than I ever could, and who commands me to love, without exceptions. The audience clapped quietly, hesitant, unsure. No one expected it to get this serious. Sunny leaned in. But you have to admit, religion has hurt people. LGBTQ folks, women, minorities. You can't deny that. I don't, Jonathan replied. But if a sword cuts someone, you don't blame the steel. You blame the hand that misused it. Whoopi leaned back, cold. That's convenient. It's true. Easy for you to say. You're a straight white guy playing Jesus. You get applause. The rest of us get silence or shame. Jonathan looked at her soft, not defensive. I get applause sometimes. But I've also been mocked, criticized, told I'm a zealot, that I'm backwards, that I'm out of touch. He paused. But I don't carry this faith because it makes me popular. I carry it because it saved me. And when something saves you, you don't hide it. The studio was frozen. Sunny tried again. Where does this boldness come from? From the quiet, Jonathan answered. From early mornings on my knees. From silence where I'm not performing, not acting, just listening. Whoopi's smile returned, but it was colder now. You actually believe God speaks to you? I do. Like words, sentences, voices? No, not always. Sometimes just peace. Sometimes conviction. Sometimes silence. And even that says something. You know how that sounds, right? Like faith. No, like delusion. That word cut. Jonathan paused. Then, if believing in something that's bigger than me, if that's delusion, then maybe we've lost more than we realize. The audience let out a murmur. A few claps, a few frowns. Joy tried to recover. Let's get back to the show, shall we? Tell us what's next for The Chosen. Any spoilers? Jonathan nodded slightly. There's a season coming where Jesus faces betrayal. Not from enemies, but friends. From those who say they love him, but don't stand with him when it matters. He looked at Whoopi, and sometimes that story doesn't feel like history. It feels like now. Whoopi leaned forward. Are you saying I'm betraying God by asking questions? No, he said. I'm saying sometimes our questions aren't seeking truth. They're seeking applause. Silence. Joy cut in again. All right, we're getting deep. Let's lighten the mood. But the room wouldn't lighten. Not anymore, because something real had shown up in that studio, and it refused to be buried under laughter. Whoopi broke the silence. You think you're better than the rest of us because you have faith. No, you act like you know something we don't. No, then why do you sound so certain? Because love makes you certain. Not about everything, but about what matters most. He took a breath. I've seen people on the edge of suicide find purpose again through Christ. I've watched addicts break chains, families reconcile, strangers become brothers. He looked straight ahead. That's not performance. That's redemption. And when you've seen it, you don't stay silent. Sunny sat back, quiet. Even Joy didn't try to shift gears. Whoopi, still unmoved, said, sounds like a nice fairy tale. Jonathan nodded slowly. Maybe it is. But if a fairy tale teaches us to forgive, to serve, to sacrifice, if it turns hearts toward hope and away from hate, maybe it's more real than what we call reality. Whoopi was silent. The studio was silent. For a moment, time stopped. And it wasn't about sides. It wasn't about winning. It was about something deeper. Something no one expected to feel on a Thursday morning talk show. Conviction. Raw, honest, undeniable. And the one who stood in it wasn't loud. He was steady. Jonathan Roumie had walked into a room ready to discredit him, and he hadn't raised his voice once. But he had spoken something stronger than argument. Something stronger than applause. Truth. And now, they didn't know what to do with it. The tension had shifted. No more jokes. No more applause signs. Something sacred had cracked through the stage lights, and everyone felt it whether they wanted to or not. But Whoopi wasn't ready to give up control. She straightened her posture, took a breath. You say God speaks to you, she said. Fine, but what does he say about me? Jonathan didn't blink. He says the same thing he says to me, he answered. That you're loved, that you're seen, that you're not forgotten. Whoopi laughed under her breath. Even when I disagree with everything you believe. Especially then. Sunny raised her eyebrows. Even when we push back, mock, resist. Jonathan nodded. Double quotes. Yes. Because his love doesn't depend on your agreement. It just is. The audience murmured again. A few heads nodded. A few eyes rolled. Whoopi leaned in. So God loves me. Huh. Even when I roll my eyes at him. Yes. Even when I say I think faith is a crutch for weak people. Yes. Even when I say the Bible is outdated, patriarchal, and full of contradictions. Jonathan paused. Yes. Even then. The silence hit harder than before. Okay, she said, arms folded. Then what's the point? If I can mock him and he still loves me, why believe at all? Because love like that changes you. He leaned forward, voice softer now. Not because it punishes you, but because it shows you something you've never known, unconditional grace. Whoopi didn't move. You have a doubt? Jonathan answered quickly. All the time. Sunny looked surprised. Really? Of course. I doubt, I wrestle. I question, then why keep going? He looked at her. Because even in the doubt, he doesn't leave. That hit somewhere. You could see it in Sunny's eyes. Something cracked. Just for a second. Whoopi caught it to dot. She pivoted fast. You know what I think? I think people like you use religion to feel safe. To pretend this messed up world has meaning when it really doesn't. Jonathan stayed calm. You think that's wrong? I think it's dishonest. I think it's desperate. No, he said. It's hopeful. She rolled her eyes. Same thing. No, he said again. Hope faces darkness and chooses to believe the light will return. He looked out toward the studio audience. There's a woman watching this right now who lost her son to addiction. A man who just got a cancer diagnosis. A kid who feels invisible. To them, hope isn't dishonest. It's the only thing keeping them alive. Joy was quiet. Sunny blinked. Even Whoopi stopped. Jonathan's voice lowered. I've sat with people, in hospice beds, held the hands of addicts, prayed with kids who don't know their father's name, and I can tell you, the light isn't just wishful thinking. He took a breath. It's real. And I've seen it shine when logic said it shouldn't. The silence was thick now. Heavy. Whoopi finally spoke again. You know, when I was young, I believed. Jonathan tilted his head, listening. My grandma, she made me go to church. Every Sunday, every holiday. I sang the songs. I wore the dress. But one day, I asked too many questions, and the preacher told me to stop doubting, or leave. A long pause, so I left. Jonathan didn't rush his reply. I'm sorry, he said. She raised her eyes, surprised. You are. Yes, that shouldn't have happened. But it did. I know. And people like him. They're the reason people like me don't come back. I understand. A quiet breath passed between them. But that wasn't God. He said that was a man who forgot what God sounds like. Whoopi didn't speak. Not for a long moment. I don't know what I believe anymore, she finally said. That's okay. I don't know if I want to believe. That's okay too. He leaned in. Faith isn't forced. It's found. She looked at him. You think there's room for someone like me? Someone who doubts everything. There's only room for people like you, Sunny whispered, almost to herself. That's actually kind of beautiful. Jonathan smiled, gently. It's the truth. The cross wasn't for the perfect, it was for the broken. The doubters, the skeptics, the loud, the proud, the wounded. His voice steadied. That includes all of us. Joy sat back in her chair. You know, I thought you were just another Christian actor pushing a message, but you're not what I expected. I get that a lot. Laughter this time, real, unforced. Whoopi looked at him again. What do you think Jesus would say to me right now? Jonathan didn't hesitate. I think he'd say, come home. Her eyes blinked fast. But she didn't look away. I don't know if I can. He nodded slowly. That's okay. He'll wait. And in that moment, the debate turned into something else entirely. Not a clash, not a confrontation, but a crack in the wall. A seed planted. And maybe that's what real faith looks like. The cameras were still rolling, but it didn't feel like a show anymore. It felt like church. Without pews. Without robes. Just souls. Exposed. Jonathan sat still, hands folded, calm. The panel. Silent. Even Whoopi, for once, had nothing left to throw. She looked at him, eyes narrowed. Not with hostility, but something else. Vulnerability. You really believe he loves me? Jonathan's voice was quiet. I do. After everything I've said. Especially after everything you've said. She swallowed, her voice softer. Now, I'm not good at faith. I'm better at sarcasm, anger, control. That's okay, he said. God's not afraid of any of that. He already sees it. He's just waiting for what's underneath. And what's that? He smiled faintly. A heart that's tired of pretending not to care. Joy glanced between them. The audience was still. No laughter, no interruptions. Just stillness. Sunny leaned forward, her voice shaky. Jonathan, this isn't the segment we planned. But something's happening right now, isn't it? He nodded. It's not about me, or this show, or this moment. It's about what happens after. When the cameras go off, when people go home, when the noise fades, and they're left alone with themselves. Whoopi exhaled. That's the part I hate most. The silence. Yeah, that's when the voices come. The regrets. The questions. He looked at her gently. And maybe the answer too. She blinked slowly. You're not what I thought you'd be, and you're not as far as you think. Joy wiped at her eye. Okay, now I'm crying and I don't even know why. The audience chuckled, but it was warm. Soft. Jonathan glanced around the room. You know, faith isn't about getting it all right. It's about knowing you never will. And choosing to walk toward God anyway. He looked down for a moment, then back up. It's about surrender, not perfection. Whoopi, let that sit. Then, you think I could ever believe again? He nodded slowly. Yes. Not all at once. Maybe not even today. But belief doesn't need to arrive fully formed. Sometimes it grows from just one honest question. She sat back in her chair. Well, consider this mine. They shared a moment of silence, and something softened between them. Walls that had been built over decades. Cracked. Not broken, not destroyed, but opened. Sunny's voice came next. Jonathan, what would you say to people watching this? People who feel like they've lost too much to believe again? He answered without hesitation. I'd say, it's okay to feel broken. It's okay to be angry. God's not looking for a polished version of you. He's looking for the real you. He pointed to his chest. I've met him more in my own mess than I ever did in my performance. Whoopi nodded slowly. Then, barely above a whisper, me too. Joy clasped her hands. Wow. Just wow. Sunny leaned back, looking emotional. You didn't preach, you just showed up. And somehow, that hit deeper than any sermon ever could. Jonathan shrugged softly. That's all Jesus did. He showed up. He didn't shout people down. He sat with them, ate with them, listened. He looked toward the camera. To anyone watching this, whether you believe or not, whether you feel lost or angry, or numb, you're not too far gone. You're not too broken. You're not invisible. He let the silence hold. You are loved still, even now. The crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. But it wasn't for entertainment. It was for truth. Whoopi looked down at her hands. She didn't speak again. She didn't have to. Something in her had changed, even if just a little. And that was enough, because faith doesn't need a dramatic conversion. Sometimes, it just needs a pause, a question, a breath. As the show wrapped up, Joy gave one final word. Jonathan Roumie, thank you for being here. You didn't just give us a guest spot. You gave us something we didn't know we needed. He smiled. Thank you for listening. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. The segment ended. But the story didn't. Because what started as a mockery ended as a moment. A moment millions would replay. Not because it was controversial, but because it was real. And in a world addicted to noise, silence filled with truth is the loudest thing of all.